Put on a suit. Drink water. Don't drink and drive.
Game over!
Take it light. Stay.
Now you're more fluent.
He's got three!
Up, Bears.
So this is really good right here. Absolutely. Let's do it.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls all over the world. What's happening tonight? You know what time it is when you see me. It's your resident NBA analyst. What's going on tonight, guys? How you doing? Everything good? Good. I want to get right to this. I don't really want to waste a lot of time with it. I want to get right to this, and because this is a really interesting topic that I have for tonight. When I hear, what up, Laughs? When I hear people discrediting accolades, I think it's interesting off the strength that it's not their guy. That's why they discredit it. When people talk about accolades and they talk about, accolades don't matter, it's primarily because the guy whom they dig hasn't won these accolades. So immediately they will. So then I'll talk about the defensive player of the year, right? So the defensive player of the year is very much like the league MVP. It's kind of tied to the best player in the league. It's kind of tied to the best player in the league, but the best player in the league doesn't always win it. Well, it's very much like the defensive player in the defensive player of the year. It's kind of tied to the best defensive player in the game because sometimes the best defensive player in the league does win it. And because he wins it, that's what the award is viewed as. The defensive player of the year, you're the best defensive player in the game. Well, that's not necessarily true. Just like when you're the league MVP, you're the best player in the game. Well, that was true a lot of years ago, like when Jordan won it. Yeah, absolutely. When Magic won it, when Bird won it, when Shaq won it, when Bryant won it, when James won it. I mean, I could keep, when Joker just won it, when Giannis won it. Right? I do understand what it's tied to, and sure, sometimes the best player in the league wins the league MVP. But there have been plenty of instances where the best player in the league has not won the league MVP. There's been, and the guy who won the league MVP wasn't the best player. I mean, I can make an argument that in 2018, James Harden was the best player in the league. Sure. I can make an argument for him, what he was doing. Even though I thought it was James. I didn't think it was Harden. No. I can make an argument for Giannis in 2019 that he was the best player in the league. I still thought it was James. But the same logic is true for the defensive player of the year. I mean, by show of hands, how many of you guys think that Marcus Smart was the best defensive player in the game? I don't think he was better than Mikal Bridges that year, if I'm being honest. I'm not even talking about the rest of the defensive players in the league. Like, I don't think he was better than Giannis. I don't think he was a better defensive player than Drew Holiday. But specifically, I don't think he was better than Mikal Bridges. But what does the defensive player of the year, what's the criteria? Well, more times than not, very much like the league MVP. Well, not like the league MVP. I'm gonna rewind that. Let's try that again. What is the defensive player of the year? It's very much like the league MVP, where the best defensive player in the game does win it sometime. That does happen. Like when Olajuwon won it in '94. Like when Dennis won it. Like when Dennis Rodman won the defensive player of the year. When Olajuwon won it in '94. When Dwight Howard won it. All of those years that he won it. Right? But then there's times when the best defensive player in the game doesn't win it. But because that's what it's tied to, I didn't think that Mutombo in 1997, I don't think that he was a better defensive player in 1997 than Scottie Pippen. I don't think so. But I do understand that. So like when Ben Wallace won it, right? When Ben Wallace won it, was Ben Wallace the best defensive player in the game? I mean, you can make that argument. Was he a better defensive player than Tim Duncan? Was he better than Kevin Garnett at that time? Because this is what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about the defensive player of the year being the best defensive player in the game, and it's undisputed. So when Olajuwon won it in '94, I think it was undisputed. I don't think it was a better defensive player in the game than Hakeem Olajuwon. And I thought David Robinson was a damn good defensive player. I thought Dennis Rodman was an awesome defensive player. But I thought that in 1994, I don't think that there was a better defensive player than Hakeem Olajuwon. I think when when Dwight Howard won the defensive player of the year, I think he was the best defensive player in the game. I think he was the best defensive player in the game at that time. And when I think about what Leonard did, I think he won it in 16. He was the defensive player of the year. I wasn't sure. I can't say undisputed. He was a better defender than James. I can't say that undisputed, but I do think that he was a better defender at that time than James was. I do think that. Was Draymond Green the best defensive player in the game when he won the defensive player of the year? I think that's legit. I think that's 100% legit, considering what was going on during that time in 2017 when he won the defensive player of the year. I think that was legit. Not just him winning the defensive player of the year. Was Draymond the best defensive player in the game at that time? I do think that was legit. Considering what Leonard was, I don't think that there was a huge gap between Leonard and Draymond Green, but it was this, and then it was this. And these two guys, I feel like these two guys weren't far away from each other. I feel like Draymond, I think he was a better off-ball defender. I think he was a better roamer. He was better in the lane. He was better manning the paint. Very good at taking charges. He was a better rebounder in traffic than Leonard. So I think that was I think that was legit at that point. The best defensive player in the game. And you had some pretty good defensive players in the game. DeAndre Jordan was a damn good defender. Leonard was a good defender. No doubt. So sometimes the best defensive player in the game does win it. That does happen. But then, again, what is it tied to? Is it tied to, right? Was it tied to, what is it tied to the best defensive player? Or do the voters, whom I want to make sure we're clear, we're talking about two different voters. There's voters who vote for the All-NBA team, and then there's voters who vote for the All-NBA team. And then there's voters who vote for the All-League defensive team. Those two aren't the same. So when I think about what Rudy Gobert's impact is on defense, because a lot of you guys, they'll talk about what his impact is in the playoffs and how he gets sniffed out. Okay, what happened against Dallas in I believe it was 2019? Yeah, I want to say either 2019 or 2022 when they lost to Dallas in the first round. 21. When they spread the defense. He was better. They played 5 out. He still was better at closing out, but that happens. That could have happened to anybody. That could have happened to Anthony Davis. That could have happened to Kevin Garnett. That could have happened to Dwight Howard. That could have happened to anybody. In I believe it was 21 when what happened with Terrence Mann. Just so you know, Terrence Mann never had a game like that ever again, ever. Before He did that against Rudy Gobert, and since never had another game like that ever. And then we just had the playoffs not too long ago where he went up against Joker, which I can guarantee you guys, because I was there and I remember it, none of us were talking about David Robinson like that. Olajuwon ate his lunch. None of us were talking about David Robinson not being an adequate defender. Not one of us. So I asked the question when I run down what the Defensive Player of the Year entails. In the NBA, and I only went back to, I didn't go back to the 82-83 season when it first started, when Sidney Moncrief won it. I only went back 30 years. And what I found out in the last 30 years is that the Defensive Player of the Year, with the exception of Ben Wallace, with the exception of Mutombo and Marcus Camby, the Defensive Player of the Year is on a top 10 defense in the league. Lonzo Mourning is the only guy who won the Defensive Player of the Year whose team was outside the top 5. He's the only one. Miami was 7th in the 99-2000 season. Everybody else who's won the Defensive Player of the Year has been on the top 3 to top 5 defense. And they've been the best defender on that team, with the exception of Marc Gasol. With the exception of, now, and that in itself is tricky, right? And that in itself is tricky off the strength that we're just talking about defense, Abby. Focus. How about that? How about you focus for a second? This has nothing to do with him being a player. Nothing. So focus. How about that, my man? Can you do me a favor and focus? This has nothing to do with Rudy Gobert matching up with David Robinson as a player. We're just talking specifically defensively. That's it. So focus. Anyway, like I was saying, Lonzo Mourning was the only guy whose team finished outside the top 5. They were 7th. The 99-2000 Miami Heat. They were 7th. I actually thought that Shaq should have won the Defensive Player that year. Defensive Player of the Year that year. But that's just me. I might be a little bit biased in that aspect. But more times than not, if you go down the line and you look at who the Defensive Player of the Year is and what his impact is, what this guy's impact is on his team defensively, more times than not, that's your Defensive Player of the Year. It's not necessarily, and again, I want to make sure that I clarify this. Sometimes that's the best defensive player in the game. Sometimes that happens. And there is, I don't think that there's anybody where if the Miami Heat finished 3rd, right? If the Miami Heat finished 3rd in defense and Bam won the Defensive Player of the Year, I don't think that there's anybody who would say, I don't think there's anybody who would object if the word was, Bam's the best defensive player in the game. I don't think that there'd be many objections to that. There might be some people who would argue Anthony Davis. There might be some people who would argue there might be some people who would argue Rudy Gobert. There might be some people who would argue other great defenders in the game. There might be some people who would argue that. But I don't think that you'd get a lot of pushback if the Miami Heat were a top 5 defensive team and Bam won the Defensive Player of the Year, and the consensus was this is the best defensive player in the game. Not he just won Defensive Player of the Year because he was on the best team defensively. I don't think that that's up for discussion if we're being honest. Because to be honest with you, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I wouldn't. Right? I wouldn't have a problem if Cleveland was a top 3 defense and Evan Mobley won the Defensive Player of the Year. I wouldn't have a problem if the word is Evan Mobley's the best defensive player in the game. That wouldn't bother me at all. I think that he's close anyway. I don't think that it's something where I'm like, wow, Mobley, the best deep. No, I think he was close anyway. So if I think about what Rudy did in 18, so this was a Utah Jazz team that was a playoff team. And they were a playoff team largely due to their defense. The year before 18, in the 16-17 season, they were the number 3 defense in the league. That was the year that Draymond won the defensive player of the year. Utah was 3 in the league that year in defense. The next year, they were the second best defense in the league. Rudy ended up winning the defensive player of the year. And this goes back to what he was when he was off the floor as opposed to when he was on the floor. The impact he had on this crew defensively. Now, the game hadn't stretched in 18 to what it is now. So when my man Wood tells me, right, when my man Wood tells me that Gobert isn't an elite shot blocker with a career average of 2 a game, high 2.7, led the league one time with 2.6. Well, you got to remember what we're talking about now. So remember when he became that. So the big man is dying. We're playing further away from the basket. Guys aren't coming in the lane nearly as much as they did in 1995 as they did guys aren't coming in the lane nearly as much in 2017, 2018, 2019, nearly as much as they did in 1993. You don't have to guard on the box as much because, again, the game is getting pushed further away from the basket. So the big man is playing a little bit more further away from the basket. Guys are playing more in the mid-range and at the long ball line. They're not playing at the rim as much. So because of that, you're not going to see what you saw with Olajuwon where, he's blocking 5-6 shots a game. No. You're not going to see what you saw with Mutombo where he's blocking 3-4 shots a game. That's not going to happen. But he was a damn good rim protector. Damn good rim protector. In terms of him being a positional defender, I mean, I feel like they're all like that. I feel like Anthony Davis is a great positional defender, a great roamer. I don't want to take away from him as a one-on-one defender because I do think that he's a damn good one-on-one defender, and I think he's a damn good paint presence, just like Rudy is. But I digress. In 2018, considering who was available and who was up for Defensive Player of the Year that year, Joel Embiid was in year 2 at that point. His team had went from 14 to 3 in overall defense. By the way, he was on the crew the year before when they were 14th in the league in defense. That was his first year in the league, right? That was his first year in the league in 17. And with that, now you add Ben Simmons to the crew. So they're much better defensively with Ben Simmons on the crew. Meanwhile, Rudy Gobert is running around with Gordon Hayward, Joe Johnson, a Rook Donovan Mitchell, Royce O'Neal. I think Royce O'Neal was in year 1 or year 2, something like that. And what I can't do is I can't take away from Royce O'Neal being young. I can't say Royce O'Neal is young and then turn around and not recognize that Ben Simmons was young. But also, I think Ben Simmons was better. Right? Not that's not to say that he wasn't. I just think that not to say that Royce O'Neal wasn't a damn good defender. I just think that Ben Simmons was better. And he's running around with guys like Joe Ingles. And he's anchoring a defense. And I think he played 79 games that year. Yeah, I think he played something like 79 games that year. 77, 78 games, 79 games that year. And then we fast forward to, no, I don't want to fast forward. I want to stay right where we are. I think Anthony Davis does have a case, 100% in 2018. He was fantastic that year. I think he was a better glass cleaner. I'm not sure he was a better rim protector at that point, but he definitely was a better glass cleaner. When I think about 21, I won't jump to 21 yet. I want to stay on 18. And I think about who Anthony Davis was running with. Drew Holiday was on that crew. I think Rondo was on that crew too in 18. Rudy Gobert didn't have that. He didn't have Rondo. He didn't have Drew Holiday, if I'm not mistaken. He didn't have those guys yet. He didn't have anybody like that. He didn't have anybody. He didn't have a Rondo. He didn't have Drew Holiday. He didn't have that on his crew. He had Donovan Mitchell. He had Joe Ingles. He had Royce O'Neal. These are the guys he's running with, and he's got to man that defense. That's him taking care of that. And then you fast forward to 21. You fast forward to 21, where this is a bottom 5 defense when Rudy's off the floor. Right? This is a bottom 5 defense with Royce off the floor. Get out of my chat, Dubs. Get out of my don't what up me. Get out of my chat. Nah. Smile in my face, behind my back, you talk trash, you get around those goofies that you get around, and you crack jokes on me, but then you come in here, yo, chill, what up? That's goofy. Get out of my chat, yo. Nah, I ain't doing that with you. Get up out of here, yo. Beat it. In 21, right? In 21, that's a top top 5, that's a bottom 5 defense with Rudy off the floor. When Rudy's on the floor, numero uno. Best defense in the league. Best defense in the league. So that's the impact that he has. Now, I think it was in 18. It was either 18 or 21 where he only played 55 games. One of those 2 years. I don't want to give you misinformation because again, we live in an age where, right? We live in an age where fact checking is very, very important. So you got to know what you're talking about. You have to. So the year he won the Defensive Player of the Year in 18, he only played 56 games that year. So the year before that, he played almost 80. He played almost 82 games. He played 81 games. And in 21, when he won the Defensive Player of the Year, that was the lockout short, not the lockout. I'm sorry. That was the year after COVID. He basically played the whole season. It was 72 games that year. He played 71 of them. So the year he won the Defensive Player of the Year in 18, that was the only time that he had played where he won the Defensive Player of the Year. That was the only time that he played below 60 games. It was the only time. When he won it in 21, and when he won it in 19, because he won it again the next year, right? He won it again the next year in 19. Who I'll challenge anybody when I think about what was going on in in 19. Was Giannis a better defensive player than him that year? And I know Paul George was up for it, and I can definitely give you, right? I can definitely give you what Giannis was doing that year because he ended up winning the Defensive Player of the Year the next year. And I really appreciate guys who compete on the defensive side of the ball, but I think Rudy's impact overall as a roamer, as a rebounder, because again, we're talking about a guy in Rudy Gobert who has, if I'm not mistaken, has led the league in rebounding. 100% he's done that. He has. And he's been he had a 4-year stretch where he was 13 boards a game. 13. Right? 13 boards a game. So that's what I'd like to see from Joel Embiid, if I'm being honest with you guys. Yeah. If Joel Embiid was, and I know that, again, guys are getting pushed a little bit further away from the basket, so I understand. Guys are getting pushed, so there's a lot more long rebounds. Guys are a little bit more efficient at the long ball line. Not as much, but they still are efficient at the long ball line. So the brand of basketball can be a bit much. I mean, I watched the Clippers go 8 for 40 on the long ball. Oh my God, that was hard to watch. That was disgusting to watch, but I digress. He had a 4-year stretch where he was averaging close to 13 rebounds a game for 4 straight years. I care about stuff like that. A lot of people don't think that A lot of people don't think that defense and rebounding are the same thing. I mean, rebounding is the last line of defense. I've always said that. Rebounding is the last line of defense. That's your stop. If you don't rebound the ball, if you don't rebound the ball, we don't get stops. And it's not as simple as some would admit. So then, again, we're talking about in 19, where Utah was in the 18-19 season, when Rudy won the Defensive Player of the Year again. Right? When Rudy won the Defensive Player of the Year again, they were second in the league in defense. And again, he doesn't have Drew Holiday. He doesn't have Rondo like Anthony Davis has. He doesn't have that. No. You know, he's running around with Donovan Mitchell and Royce O'Neal, Alec Burke and Grayson Allen. Right? These are the guys that he's running with. Joe Ingles, Kyle Korver. I mean, these are the guys that Rudy Gobert is running around with in the 2018, 2019 season. And they got the second best defense in the league. When you got a guy like that behind you manning the paint, when you got a guy like that behind you, it allows Kyle Korver, it allows Donovan Mitchell, it allows guys like Mike Conley, who, you know, we're going to get to Mike Conley in a bit, but it allows Ricky Rubio. You know, it allows guys like that to take chances off the strength that I got somebody behind me to clean up my mess. And more times than not, he did clean up your mess. I'm gonna send you in there to the big fella, and he's gonna deal with you. And more times than not, he did that. More times than not, he did do that. When I think about what happened in 21, when I think about what happened in 21, I think that 21. I don't think that there's if I'm being honest with you, I don't think that there's a question with 21. I don't. I don't think that there is a question of whether the Defensive Player of the Year should have gone to him. I'm being honest with you. I mean, Mike Conley, he was in year 14 at that point, so he was getting long in the tooth. You know, he had guys like Bojan and Jordan Clarkson running with him. You know, guys like that. You know, Donovan Mitchell, who was only in year 3 at that time, Royce O'Neal, Rudy Gobert was established at that point as an elite defender. And it was obvious when he was off the floor, right? When it was obvious when he was off the floor, they were in the bottom of the league defensively when he was off the floor. That's a big deal. If you had a guy, there's no way that you can, there's no way that you guys can sell me that this wasn't the Defensive Player of the Year, but then turn around, and tell me, right? Then turn around and tell me that when James is off the floor or when Curry is off the floor, how bad the Golden State Warriors offense is and how much of an MVP candidate he is. But then turn around and tell me when Rudy's off the floor and how bad this defense is. But they're a playoff team when he's on the floor. In fact, not only a playoff team, they were the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. Number 1 seed in the Western Conference. Number 1. But when Curry is off the floor, how bad that Golden State Warriors offense was. But then he gets back on the floor and they're right back at the top of the league. And they're a playoff team with him on the floor. I mean, I feel like that's a pretty big deal. Pretty big deal. And then you add in, right? Then you add in last year and how much better did he make that Minnesota team? Because again, last year wasn't the first year he was on the crew, right? He was on the crew in the 22-23 season. Yes, he was. He was on that crew. And they finished in the top. So the year he got on the crew, they finished in the top 10. The year he got on the crew. The year before that, they won a top 10 defense. They go from being right around, they go from being a little bit above average to the next season when they get Rudy to top 10 to last season being numero uno. Numero uno. That's a pretty big deal. That's the impact, right? That's the impact that I have on an overall defense. Right? That's the impact that I have. So I don't know what years I can say when I'm thinking about the years that Rudy Gobert won the Defensive Player of the Year. Right? I'm thinking about the years he won the Defensive Player of the Year. Definitely not 19, not 18. Let me rephrase that. I'm gonna say 18, I'm gonna say 19. Definitely not 21. Definitely not 21. And then last year, if I'm thinking about who was up for Defensive Player of the Year last year, who was up for Defensive Player of the Year last year, and who should have won it considering the impact that they had on their crew, I think we can have a conversation about Bam. I think we can have a conversation about Bam. I'm not buying the Vic stuff. Vic, if I watch Vic is a little suspect guarding on the box. And that's because he's young. That's all. That's because he's young. He's great at covering space, though. And that's because he's 7'4" with like almost an 8-foot wingspan. He's great at covering space, and I love that about him. And I think that the class of for the future, because I think Bam, Rudy, Anthony Davis are right now. I do. I think the class of the defender in the NBA, I think it's going to be Evan Mobley. I think it's going to be Wemby and Chet. I think that's going to be the class of the defender in the NBA moving forward. I have Evan Mobley as the Defensive Player of the Year this year. And I know that there's some people who don't like that. I just know how much better Cleveland is going to be defensively. Coach Atkinson, right? Coach Atkinson, I think he does a great job in coaching those guys up, right? I think he does a great job at that. And of course, and of course you're going to say that. And the reason why you're going to say that is because you're a fan. There's no legit logic that you can give me to say that he'll be leaps above Mobley, considering how switchable Mobley is, considering the one-on-one defender he is on the wing, considering the glass cleaner that he is, considering what he does in the paint as a defender. There's no way that you can say that he will be leaps and bounds above Mobley. You're saying that because you're a fan, and and that's fine. I don't. To be honest, if I'm being honest with you, I don't take issue with that. I don't take issue with that at all. None whatsoever. I wish I could say that I took issue with that. And Green, that's dumbass logic. And here's why that's dumbass logic. You know why? Because Rudy is taller and longer than Bam. You think Bam is a better defender than Rudy. So you keep quiet. You keep quiet. That's what I want you to do. I want you to stop talking with your slick comments when you come in here every day with that nonsense. Because you think Bam is a better defensive player than Rudy, and Rudy's taller and longer than him. So kill that. Kill it. As I was saying, right? As I was saying, I think those two guys are the class, right? I think those guys are the class of the defensive players. Right? I think those guys are the class of the defensive players, and because I think those guys are the class of the defensive players, I think the league is in great hands. I do. I think the league is in great hands. I am interested to see the steps that Wemby takes this year as a defender, but I don't want to move too further. I don't want to move too far away from exactly what it is I'm talking about. But when I think about what Rudy Gobert has been able to do, now I know that when we're talking about, great defenders, I'm confident, especially big guys, you should be able to hold your own at your position. And for the most part, what that means is canceling a guy out. That's what that ultimately means. Because in 1995 was the year that Olajuwon separated himself from Ewing and David Robinson. Up until that point, it was like this with the three of those guys. It wasn't this. It was not. Olajuwon wasn't leaps and bounds better than Ewing as a defender. He was a better defender than Ewing, but I don't think he was leaps and bounds. David Robinson wasn't. Olajuwon didn't clear David Robinson as a defender. No, he didn't. He did not. That's not true. I do think that he was better, but he didn't clear him. It was in 95 when the separation happened. After he handled Ewing and after he handled David Robinson. That's where the separation came. At that point. Up until that point, we were having a conversation. A real one. A real one. And I do understand when we're talking about the big guy, how you have to be able to defend your position. I get that. 100% I get that. Sure. And the reason why I get that is off the strength that, the reason why I get that is off the strength that that's my primary matchup. I got to be able to slow this guy down. That's my job. Right? That's my job. I got to slow this guy down. I have to be able to do that. Lonzo Mourning had a difficult time dealing with Shaq. He had a really difficult time dealing with Shaq. Patrick Ewing had a difficult time dealing with Olajuwon. He had a really difficult time dealing with him. Olajuwon had a difficult time dealing with Ewing also. Up until the 94 finals, those two guys, it wasn't like it wasn't this. I thought Olajuwon was better, but it was a real conversation between those two guys. A serious one, right? A serious one. And I'm sorry for a second. I was not talking to Siri. Siri has a tendency to, like when I'm talking, see what I'm talking about? Siri has a tendency when I'm talking, I'm not even talking to her, but she'll just chime into my conversation. I don't get it. Starts to make me wonder if, am I in the Matrix around here? What's going on? And to answer your question, this is a really good question. I think so. Yes. I'm thinking 88 to 94. Yeah. I'm thinking 89 to, I'm thinking probably 89, his best defensive years. I'm thinking 88 to probably 95. To about 6 set to the mid 90s. I think those was Olajuwon's best defensive years. Yeah. I think they were his best defensive years, the best ones. But I'll entertain 18. I'll entertain 9. I won't entertain 21. I don't think that there's anybody in 21 where I can say, when I think about what Rudy did that year defensively, that what he did that year defensively in 21, I don't know if there's anybody that has a legit case over him. I mean, Ben Simmons was in the conversation, and even Draymond was, but I don't think that it was a real conversation, considering what Rudy had done that year with that crew. What he had done that year with that crew, and how bad they were with him off the floor, and how much he had played. I won't entertain 21. Nope. I will not. So I say that to say the defensive player, I say that to say the defensive player of the year, right? I say that to say the defensive player of the year is very much like the league MVP. Very much like it. Off the strength that when you think about what it is sometimes the best defensive player in the game. That happens. That does happen. And when these guys win these awards, that's kind of what it pushes toward. Right? That's kind of what, or that's kind of where it goes. Just like with the league MVP. So when you have the league MVP and James wins it, right? When you have the league MVP and Kevin Durant wins it. I mean, it was a conversation in 2014 between him and James. I thought James was better. I never thought that there was a time when James wasn't better than KD. I never thought that there was a time. However, it was a conversation. Just like in 16, when Steph Curry won the league MVP. There are some people who thought Curry was the best player in the league at that point. I didn't think that. And it got settled that year. We're done with that conversation. It definitely got settled. We're finished with that. Even in 15, I didn't think Curry was the best player in the game. No, I didn't. And in 16, when he won it, what it did was I feel like it solidified him. And I think it legitimized him. See, when you I feel like when you win when you win something, I don't care what it is, whether it's the league MVP, the defensive player of the year, the NBA championship, when you win in something, I feel like when you win it in back-to-back seasons, I feel like it solidifies you and I feel like it legitimizes you because it shows what I did wasn't a fluke. And when you do that, I feel like people can't talk about you like they did in the past. Because not only did I do it once, I did it again. Right? I did it again. Same logic with Rudy when he won the defensive player of the year in 18. He turned around and won it again in 19. Did it again. Did it again to legitimize him. So when as good as you are as a defensive player, again, sometimes the best defensive player in the game wins it. Sometimes he doesn't. But as good as you are as a defensive player, I don't think that when you don't win it, it doesn't delegitimize you because I still feel like you're playing at that level. I don't think any less of Tim Duncan because he didn't win defensive player of the year. I don't think any less. I don't think any less of Scottie Pippen. Because I hear people telling me, Kawhi Leonard is a better defender than Scottie Pippen because he won the defensive player of the year. Well, I'm thinking about who Scottie Pippen was losing to. Scottie Pippen is coming in third to Dennis and Olajuwon, right? He's coming in Dennis and Olajuwon and Mutombo, Gary Payton. These are the guys he's competing with for defensive player of the year. Now, I could also use that same logic, right? I could also use that same logic with Rudy. Okay, well, the big man was dying at that time, so I didn't have to see Olajuwon. I didn't have to see Ewing. I didn't have to see Shaq, right? I didn't have to see David Robinson. I didn't have to see Rick Smits. I'm thinking about other big men in the game, right? I didn't have to see the better big men in the game at that point. I didn't have to see these guys. I didn't have to see Mutombo because the big man was dying. But, I mean, the case could be made that it was even more difficult for him off the strength that I feel like the case could be made more for him off the strength that because the big man was dying and the game was getting moved further away from the basket, where he had to cover and who he had to cover for, I think that's a pretty big deal. 100%, I think that's a big deal. So I like I said, I feel like Rudy got legitimized in 19 when he wanted him back-to-back seasons. I won't entertain 21. And considering what he did on this Minnesota team in 24, so before he gets on the crew, they're an above-average defensive team. They go from being an above-average defensive team to a top 10 defensive team to the number 1 overall defensive team in the game. That means something to me. That means something. I care about that. I do. I 100% care about that. There's some people who don't. So I do care about that. I have yet to see a guy who is consistently with the amount of people that he had around him, consistently had that kind of impact on his team defensively. Because remember what we're talking about. So when he gets on the crew in 22, I mean, Ant is in year 2. Ant ain't there yet. No, Ant is not there yet. Cat still got the soft label. I don't know who Naz Reid is yet. I don't. I have no idea who Naz Reid is. They just got Jaden McDaniels. And to put a guy like Jaden McDaniels around Rudy, that's just going to enhance Jaden McDaniels' game. But it's also going to enhance Rudy's game too, because I'm a firm believer in the idea that you know, better players make you better. Excuse me. Better players definitely make you better. I won't argue that. When you play with better players, one of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to get better or you're going to get off the floor. And Rudy has shown over the years that when he plays with lesser players, he's elite. When he plays with better players, he's still elite. So my game as a defender travels. Right? My game as a defender does travel, as opposed to only when I'm playing with great players. I can man a great defense. I can anchor a great defense, but I can also anchor a lesser than defense and make it great. And I think that comes from upstairs too. It's not just standing in the paint and holding up my hands. That's not the case. No. That is not the case at all. No way is that the case. So, with that being said, right? With that being said, what he does for his crew, right? What he does for his crew as a glass cleaner, as a rim protector, as a rim deterrent, because a lot of people think that, you know, blocking shots, that's just rim protection. No, it's not. It's not. So when I see, right, when I see a guy like DeMar DeRozan coming down the lane and he sees Rudy and he's going the other way, I mean, that's impact. When I see other guards who see Rudy, and also Rudy is your signal caller on the front line. He's talking to you guys. Now, there's some people, like Shaq, for example, who they think he's whack. And the reason why they think he's whack is because Shaq had to do it on the other side of the ball too. Yep. He had to do it on the other side of the ball. And because he had to do it on the other side of the ball, he expects you to do the same thing. I use my Bo Jackson analogy with Shaq all the time. So when I see Bo Jackson catching a fly ball and then running up a wall and Bo looking at you like, you can't do that? No, Bo. In fact, not only can I not do that, you're the only one who can do that. Nobody else can do that except you. And ninjas. That's it. Nobody else can run up a wall except you and ninjas. So when I see Shaq doing what he's doing, and you expect Rudy to be that effective. No, Big, that's just you. You can do that. And Chamberlain and Jabbar and Lajuan. That's it. Nobody else. And he's not that good. No. But as a defender, yes. Yes, as a defender, he's damn good. 100% he is. So, hold on for a second, guys. I got a call on line one. Let me take this really quickly, and I'm going to get right back to you guys. What up?
What up, Chill?
What up?
What up? Yeah, so I just I've never seen a game to where I say like Rudy, man, he's a great defender, and I've always wanted to see that game. And I like the one game that he had against the Clippers that was real bad, and Terrence Mann was making all those threes. That really didn't. I didn't care about that, but like. You remember that game one when Porzingis came back this year and he had like those 3 blocks in the first half?
When he
I've
played
never
when
seen,
he played with the
yeah,
Celtics, sure.
I've never seen that from Rudy. Maybe I just haven't seen the game. Do you know the game when Rudy
Absolutely.
has looked at? What game was that? I
Against
have to go
Oklahoma
check that out.
in the regular season against Oklahoma City. Shut the
Okay.
door on Chet. Shut the door on him and Oklahoma City. It was great.
And so even as a help side defender, he was like
Not
shutting down the paint.
not just as a help side defender, even as an on-ball defender, closing out, not just closing out, right? Not just closing out, but switching, being able to switch in the paint, being able to close out in the paint, being able to block shots and get the shots. He did a great job on Chet that game. Great job.
Okay. Yeah,
Yep.
because I know like Anthony Davis, I've seen a lot of games from him, and I'm like, man, Anthony Davis is a great defender
Mm-hmm.
because he's getting like multiple blocks. And I know blocks isn't like the only thing that's important.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I feel like as a big, the bigs that have been criticizing him, like those bigs were known for getting blocks, like Dwight Howard. He was a guy that got a lot of blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. I'm just ready to see that game. And whenever they the Nuggets had Wolves had played the Nuggets this year,
Yep.
I saw Cat do a good job on Jokic. I
Mm-hmm.
saw Nas Reed do a good job on Jokic.
Yep.
But I didn't see Rudy Gobert do as good as they did. So if he's
I
a
didn't either.
four-time defensive player of the year, I feel
Had a
like
difficult time with
there
him.
should have been possessions when Jokic whenever because Jokic is not a dunker. So when he kept doing those little hook shots
Mm-hmm.
in the post, I think Rudy Gobert should have been blocking those as a four-time offensive player of the year. I feel
Now,
like Hakeem would have blocked those. Wilt
well,
Chamberlain would have blocked a couple.
I feel like
Kareem
every
Abdul-Jabbar would have blocked a couple.
I feel like every player has his struggles with certain players. I mean, Shaq used to tell me all the time he couldn't do nothing with Big Country. As much as he tried, he couldn't do anything with him. Nothing at all. So what you saw in the playoffs with Rudy dealing with Joker, that's not the first time that's happened. Joker's had his way with Rudy for a long time. This goes back to when Joker became elite in like 19. He's always, I don't know what it is about Joker, even though I think he's the best player in the league. He's always had his way with Rudy. But then I watched Rudy playing against Phoenix in the playoffs and how much he affected that defense at that particular time. I thought that was fantastic what he did with Nurkic. I thought that was fantastic what he did, man in the paint and getting and running Devin Booker out of the paint and protecting the rim the way he did. I thought that was, in fact, not only did I think that was fantastic, he was the reason why they were able to play one-on-one coverage the way that they were. It was because of him that Ant was able to play one-on-one coverage, that Jaden McDaniels was able to play one-on-one coverage on KD. Because of him, specifically because of him. Now, when you put him in different spaces where you make him a roam defender, he's fantastic. When you make him a one-on-one defender, which I saw when they played against Oklahoma City, he was really good. It's just there are guys who he may have his struggles with. And I feel like that's anybody. I feel like that's any big man. And I feel like that's any player. I heard Michael Jordan say, if Reggie Miller hits his first couple of shots, I'm not really sweating that because he's going to run his mouth and he's going to end up, him and Drex are going to shoot themselves out of the game. He said, if Joe Dumars hits his first couple of shots, I'm in big trouble. 1, Joe's not going to say a word to me. 2, he's not going to chase the ball. And 3, he's going to stay within the game. So these guys have struggles with other guys. Now, I think the biggest problem is canceling these guys out. So if Rudy playing against Joker, if Rudy gave you 19 and 12, I don't think it would be that bad. But the fact that Joker does what he does and you don't get that much production offensively from Rudy, it just looks worse.
But I mean, chill. For me, I don't even think he got to shut him down. But I think in critical situations, I want to see a stop. I remember like a while ago, I was watching some highlights of the when Chamberlain had played Jabbar in one of
Blocked the
those
shot
finals,
twice.
and I saw him block the hook shot, and I was like, wow, somebody actually brought a sky hook from Kareem. Like
Twice.
yeah, twice. So I'm like, I think Rudy Gobert should be able to at least get one block. I have never seen him block Joker not once. And the way Joker plays, I think he should be able to do that as a full-time defensive player of the year, being
Fair
7
enough.
2.
Fair enough. That's fair. I can't argue that. I can't, and I won't argue that. You should be able to block more shots from him specifically. From him specifically. That's fair. I won't argue that, classic. So, all right, brother. Good to talk to you.
All right, man, you have
Yep.
a good one.
Yep. I can't argue that. That's fair enough. I mean, even though rim protection isn't solely blocking shots, but I can get with that logic. Sure. I can definitely get with that logic. The idea that, when this big man comes down the lane, I mean, I just watched I watched Stewie come down the lane, and I watched Asia smack it right back in her face. Yes, you should be able to do that as a big man. Yes, you should. That's not something that I'm asking too much of you. No, it's not. Mm-mm. That I don't think that's a ridiculous ask for you to be able to block a shot that Joker puts at the rim. Not block a three or at the 18-foot line or in the mid-range. No, but when Joker's coming down the lane, yeah, you should smack. You could smack one of those out of there. Yeah, you could definitely smack one of those out of there. No doubt about that. And I think that could change. So, this is interesting. Chill. Y'all overpraise Joker. Do y'all even hold Joker accountable for playing terrible defense? Well, no. I don't think Joker's immune to criticism. We talk about Joker all the time as a defender. I think the difference is Joker actually competes on the defensive end. He's just not good at it. That's all. So it's not that he plays terrible defense. No, he's actually competing on the defensive end. He's not Luka. He's not Dame. He's going to give me effort on the defensive end. He's just not very good at it. But he will give me effort. He will get on the glass. He will dig when he's in the post and get deflections. He will do that. I think that's the difference with him. Like, Luka is an Olay guy. He's just veering you toward the rim, and hopefully Derek Lively will deal with you, or Gafford will deal with you. He won't attempt to slow you down consistently. He won't try to do that. So, I mean, I think that's I feel like that's where the difference is. So, I'm interested to see where Joker is this season, though. I mean, I don't think I'm going to get a vast improvement. I think I already know who Joker is as a defender. I don't think that this is something that Joker's going to turn into Rick Smits as a rim protector, or Olajuwon as a no. I ain't asked. I'm not. I don't think that's the case. Hell no. Do I think that's going on at all? No, I don't think that at all. But what I do think, though, is right. What I do think is when I think about Joker. Right? When I think about Joker, what I do think is that I'm going to get consistent effort from him. I do think that. And because I'm going to get consistent effort from him, I'm straight. I am good on that. So I still have Minnesota as my favorites in the West. And I'm standing on that. I am. I still have them as my favorites in the West. I think they're the team to beat in the Western Conference. I think that Dallas were fortunate, which is what you need to be in the playoffs. Yes, you do. You need to be fortunate, and I think they were. But I still think Minnesota is the team to beat in the Western Conference. So I'm excited for this season to start. I am really excited for this season to start. But it's about that time for me, guys. It was good to see you guys tonight. Y'all know where to find me. 9 o'clock every morning. I'm on TikTok. Good Morning NBA, Monday to Friday. If I'm not there, this is where I am weeknights. If I'm not here tonight, you can catch me and my man Tony Tone Tuesday nights right here on the Sports Fluent Network and on Chilltown Hoops. Or you can catch me also weeknights, Wednesday, Thursday. I'm here, and if you can't catch me here, you catch me on Saturday afternoon at 12 p.m. Eastern with my man Big Ox. We do Chill with Chill. And most importantly, you can catch me weekdays, 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock Eastern time on the panel with the fellas. We chop it up and we get to it. So you guys know where to find me. I am not hard to find. It's always good to talk to you. It's always good to see you guys. Basketball season is coming up. So I'm geared up for it. I will see you guys soon. But until then, put on a suit, drink water, don't drink and drive. Hey, man, call your mother. The last time you talk to your mother, call your mother. I will talk to you guys soon. But until then, take it light. Take it. Absolutely, man.